2 a.m., excuse me. Erica, you want to do a roll call for us?
Yeah, so Tom DeVee.
Yep.
Arlene Zortman.
Here.
Jean Christopher.
Here.
Lauren Seeley. Here. Carrie Snow. Here. Glenn Pepper.
Here.
Jenna Reed.
Here.
And staff, we have Molly O'Donnell.
Here.
Lisa Gallagher.
Here.
Kendra Daniels. Here.
That's it so far. Harold
Harold will
is
be
supposed to be coming.
Okay, sounds good. All right, let's go on to item number 2, approval of the minutes from our March 14th meeting.
I'll move to approve. Second.
All right, so we have a motion to approve the minutes. Any discussion? Hearing none, let's vote. In favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? No? All right, that motion passes. Number 3, public invited to be heard. Do we have any members of the public that want to speak today? Does not appear so. I'd say I'm always lucky. I'm lucky. I want to hear from everybody, but I never, I don't know, maybe people are afraid to talk when I'm in the chair.
You scared them off.
I guess. So let's go on to number 4, organizational updates.
We actually don't have any right now.
Okay.
We'll go over like staffing changes or anything. It's really on the property side.
Yeah.
And then you'll do that on the property. So we don't have anything.
Okay. Number 4, development and project updates. First up is Zinnia.
Yep, so I'm gonna jump in here. So this is just a heads up of where we are. I would say overall, we had a huge push in February and March to get so many things done on the legal side, and this is not across all the projects. The legal side, getting resolutions ready to go and agreements ready to go and moving money around and applying for money, and there was just so many moving pieces that were in a tiny dip. It's gonna be tiny because then the next thing is just gonna come around. But I did wanna just give some updates on where we are on the development projects because there's still tons of moving pieces. For Zinnia, so that's the 55 units of permanent supported housing over on the Suites campus. We are preparing closing on the tax credit financing is scheduled for May 12th. And so they have to close before the end of May or else the tax credits are lost. And so there's a huge push, but this has been very much planned out and we've made headway every month so that it's not, I mean, closing is always a big rush at the end, but it's really quite planned out. And so the last things that they're dealing with are surprise utility easements to vacate. So the city council will be voting on that tonight, and moving water lines and such because of the easement access for the church that's on the back side of it. So last minute scares really on the design side where they just have to hustle and figure it all out in order to still close by May 30th. So it's moving. They've got solutions. It's just the standard, emergencies at the end. They will have to, just an FYI, the only option we had left for running the utilities is going to be underneath the gazebo that's in the middle of the parking lot there that is very popular with residents. So we would rather have that than the other options, which are more problematic in the long run. And so there will be an impact to the gazebo during construction, but then they'll rebuild it there. Anything that they do to it will come back.
So probably a couple weeks down, that's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we still have other areas on property where we can have residents congregate.
Is that gazebo built in such a way that you can just forklift it and move it now?
It's huge.
Yeah.
It's really large.
It's on a concrete pad too, isn't it? Okay.
Yeah. The reason the utilities are really challenging that whole site, there is a city water main running directly through the parking lot, which is doable to move around, but it's just a big deal. And then there are so many utilities because they're right at the entrance is right at the end of that cul-de-sac. So it's just a narrow pathway where all the utilities can go. So, and making sure, you can't make right angles with sewer. So it's just been really challenging. And then for the Recovery Cafe that we are hoping to build as an attachment to the suites right there at the front by the cul-de-sac, all the utilities are under that footprint, all of them. So we're trying to figure that out. This is now I'm moving into the whole campus. Because everything else is looking feasible for that to go there, which would be great. It's just making sure that the budget can handle all the utility relocations and make sure the investor of the suites is okay. Like, do they want us to complete the utilities totally separately or tie them together but meter them separately? It's getting really technical on that because they're generally in support as long as you don't impact our operations at all. So that's where that's at. So assuming we can figure out a cost-effective way to figure out the utilities for Recovery Cafe, that is looking feasible to do, and they're in concept design. Is there any questions on that property? We're gonna dig back into this campus again later, but that's kind of where we are. For the Hover land, we have approval from both the LHA board and the LHDC board to purchase the land from LHDC for the price that it was purchased back in, I think it was 2014. And basically just, it's just paying the same price and then paying off the loan that is attached to it that LHDC had for purchasing the land. So we're getting that done here ASAP because that's an easy slam dunk for the LHDC asset transfer. They're trying to move all their assets over to LHA. And if we make that happen before we start applying for any federal funding, which is coming up right away, then we avoid a choice limiting action, environmental review, and that type of thing. We'll probably have to do it later, but we didn't want to do that right away. We are looking for funding all over the place. It's an expensive project, for sure. And mainly because we're being pretty conservative to make sure that we don't get too surprised by costs escalations later. I mean, there's no way to avoid that totally, but just trying to plan ahead and be conservative now. And then we're still in concept design on that. We meet right after this meeting with the design team to go over like our entire to-do list for securing funding and the timelines, and our goal is to put in 4 tax credits in August of this year. And if that was successful, then we could construct in 2024. If it is not successful, which often happens, then we have time to put in again in the next year.
Non-phased, right?
Actually, we've gone back and forth trying to figure out really what is the most feasible in terms of how big is the gap, and right sizing the site for what we can really get through with a reasonable gap. And so right now it's actually not planned to be phased. We looked at that last time. We're gonna get an update on that today. But the last numbers we saw, there was approximately 75 units plus 1 community service, whether it's the early childhood education or satellite library, probably one of the 2. And so we'll see how that works.
And then if you don't get the August, that's state tax credits, would you go for 9%? Is 75 too much?
Possibly.
Because that seems like
It
a
might
big
be
number.
Yeah.
It's like right there on
It's
the
right
cusp.
there. That's something they were trying to plan for too.
Yeah.
So February 9% round is a possibility. We do know that there's another privately developed low-income housing tax credit project that's also going to submit in August down on 3rd and Atwood. But they have now focused it to 1 and 2 bedrooms, and we're doing some 1s and 2s, but trying to get as many 3 and 4s as we feasibly can. That makes it much more expensive. So, but we're hoping that there's a couple things that differentiate it so that they seem like they're not totally directly competing with each other. They will be, there's some overlap, but, so that's the goal there. And again, funding. Searching for funding, applying for everything possible to fill that gap. For Village Place here, we're actually, if you see it on your agenda, we've changed the name to Village on Main. Just trying to we're doing a refresh to the building, and we'd like to do a total refresh to the image without not changing everything, but just an update. Still has character. It ties it to downtown and makes it feel really connected to the community around. So we have submitted for tax credits just here on, I think, Friday is when we did. And that's all in. So we did a lot of conceptual design work and preliminary pricing to get to that point. And we'll still be tweaking that to see what on our wish list we can afford to accomplish. And we'll be doing that for the next couple months. Applying for gap funding as well, because there's still funding that we need to get to be able to do what we really want. And then we have hired our relocation specialist. So at some point we will bring them out to do a meeting with the residents to get to know them. I've worked with them for 7 years. They did all of our relocation work for the 2013 flood. And they are extremely knowledgeable, professional. They can do this in their sleep. I'm really happy that they're gonna help us with this and be that liaison to the residents and coordinate anything that's related to needing to do those temporary moves. And that's Village Police Center. Is there any questions on any of these?
I guess what was on that wish list, what are, specifically, just looking at what we, can and can't afford. But
So the critical
Sorry, go.
systems are always at the top, so boilers and making sure that we have all the heating, cooling, water, service, all that stuff ready for the next 20 years. The roof, anything, we're trying to, whatever is needed to make sure the next 20 years we don't have a large ticket item that we need to do without as much funding availability. So critical systems are at the top, and parking lot drainage is at the top as well, because we do have an issue there. And then other things we would like to do is the interior hasn't had a refresh since the 90s. And so we're looking at flooring, cabinets inside the units, making sure AC units are replaced, and baseboard heat if we need it, just making sure that we're just update for now and the next 20 years. Windows, yes. And then on the outside, we would be looking at siding and paint and a brick stain potentially.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yes.
And landscape improvements. And trying to make including the back area, improving that for resident use. We're trying to put in a barbecue and some raised garden beds and make it a purposeful space back there for quality of life.
And the remodeling of the
Oh, and
commercial
this
kitchen to make it more resident
So we
friendly
would-
and usable.
We're gonna open this up, get rid of the commercial equipment, put in a standard group kitchen, and then make it just more open so it's not so shut off in here. So that's a big one here. Those are our big things.
And also was it the lobby too, right? Is what we discussed earlier too.
Yep, so we need to make accessibility improvements in the lobby and remove at least the 2 ficus trees that are dripping sap, and also we need that space for the ramp anyway. But we'd still keep the atrium, keep the plants, and then just rearrange that office and lobby space. So those are the
And larger, second floor, larger laundry room and a bathroom because we don't have a public restroom on the second floor.
right.
So not a short.
Yeah, that's.
Everything's kind of like is anything low on the priority? Not really. We would like to do all of it, so, which, between planning it out carefully and using contingency as we go, if we don't need it for an emergency situation. We got everything completed at Aspen Meadows that we really wanted to within budget, so I'm hopeful. We just have to make sure we've got the backup plans, what has to go first and what can we add on later if we have the availability. There's a ton of financing work and legal work happening with that too. We are moving money all over the place. LHDC is loaning funds in, LHA is loaning funds in a different way, and rearranging the tax credit partnership in preparation for all of these things, there's been a lot of just gears working to get the financing and all of the partnership structure stuff ready to go. So, that's it.
All right, let's go on to item 6, items for input for the LHA Board of Commissioners.
So I don't have anything coming up for the next Board of Commissioners meeting, or even, most of the items coming forward are related to getting ready for development. But, so we don't have any policies in the works at the moment. But I did want to just give you a heads up on what's coming up that we have slated for next Tuesday's board meeting. Is the purchase documents for the Hover land between LHA and LHDC, having everybody approve and sign off. And possibly we're looking at updating our payment standards because BCHA has updated their payment standards for voucher holders. So meaning they told us that their voucher holders were having a hard time competing in the private market to get units. And so they've updated those to basically offer more. And so both Boulder Housing, BHP, Boulder Housing Partners, and us, we're doing an accounting review to see if we can handle that, because ideally we would stay consistent so that our voucher holders and BCHA voucher, or any other voucher holders between the three of them, have access to the same resources. But we have to make sure both us and Boulder still have to do an accounting review, because it's kind of off cycle. And so we have to look at it.
When that happens, does it cut down on the number of vouchers that we can, yeah. So that's what I thought, we're gonna lose something and gain something at the same time.
Right, and the other thing we have to look at is we don't get as much money as these other two agencies. So to continue to compete with them, to go up and up and up, when it's not affecting us, we could probably issue more vouchers. So that's what we're trying to actually.
And by not affecting us, she means our voucher holders, they're leasing up pretty quick. We're doing, currently, there's waves, but currently we don't have a ton out there looking and not able to find.
Okay,
So,
and nobody getting booted out because they can't, because that happened, that used to happen, that rent would go up and the voucher wouldn't cover the increase, so there were, that was turmoil.
And the problem is that most of ours haven't gone through the new cycle. So we did up it to 105%, but I'm not seeing very many of ours at that 105% yet. So we still have that to contend with too. We don't know. And according to Tracy, a lot of the times the rent increases at certification. So it's gonna be a gradual increase.
It's ongoing.
Yeah.
So we may or may not, after we complete that accounting review, we may or may not have the board hear that and decide what to do.
Yeah.
So those are the two main things coming up. We don't even have like any final Zinnia resolutions to put through because it's all been planned out in advance. So that's pretty exciting. So basically, that's just a miniature update for what's coming.
Okay. Let's go on to item 7 then, resident quality of life. A is permanent supportive housing campus.
So we wanted to bring this to this group before we really dive in with the owners of Zinnia. So LHA is a partner, but not the owner of Zinnia. We are going to be the property managers, but the vouchers are going to be managed by mental health partners, the supportive services, and the coordinated entry process from exiting homelessness is going to be handled by Boulder Shelter. And so with all of these partners all coming together, and then at the suites, it's not that exact arrangement. We provide the supportive services, which we have a new, oh good. Valerie, hi, so welcome. I haven't been able to meet you yet.
Oh, no, that's all right.
So Valerie is our new service coordinator and providing supportive services at the suites, Hearthstone, and Lodge. And so that's how we provide the supportive services right now. And then our vouchers are split between LHA and MHP at the suites. And so with all of these different players, and we have to come up with a property management agreement between us and the owners of Zinnia to say who's going to be responsible for what. And so we thought that'd be an opportunity as we think about what to include in that conversation. It's not just okay, we'll do snow removal. There's a lot of those technical
Yeah.
things to coordinate, but then what else could we coordinate now that we have all of these players working in one place? A big lease up process coming and making sure we can get people to Zinnia. And then really just coordinating what is the lifestyle of the campus gonna be once we add in Zinnia and then Recovery Cafe, hopefully. So as we're preparing for the discussion on the management agreement, we just wanted to see if you all had any brainstormed ideas for things to consider for making that quality of life and real campus atmosphere at the site. You can always think about it and get back to us as well, but if anybody has any thoughts off the top of their head, we would be interested in hearing.
Are you guys using a group 14 to look at the trauma-informed?
At Zinnia.
Yeah.
So Zinnia is being built by Shopworks Architecture,
Okay.
which is trauma-informed design specialist. And then we're doing a study with DU, right? Yes. DU, not MSU is doing a different study. DU is coming into the suites and doing a study of trauma-informed design for those that could use it, but moved into a place that wasn't built with it, because it was a hotel. So they're going to give us some information on what we could do to kind of bridge the gap without having it fully rebuilt. So yes, that's coming in.
Do you guys, and so this is something I just learned about from our property management team that I didn't know happened, but when we would build a new project, we would sort of cannibalize our staff, because when suddenly we have a new place that current residents want to move in, and so great, we leased up this project, but now we
Yep.
have vacancy
Everywhere else.
Is that something that we're planning for?
Not, I mean, on this one, it would be, the suites would be the only one at risk because it's PSH, truly. And so, across the two, we would just have to manage it all on site.
So maybe that's part of something
But
to
also-
brainstorm, is how are we gonna address, as you lease up one, have like a separate,
But also, Zinnia is all coming through Boulder Shelters Coordinated Entry, and so that's a different pipeline than the suites pipeline.
yeah.
But something I've thought about is the suites residents, some of which have been there a long time and are comfortable and happy, but maybe some aren't. And they see the brand new building going up and wish they could. So how could we improve life across the board to
Can
make
you
sure
get
the
them
whole
in that
campus?
pipeline?
Either that, or what can we do at the suites to make it feel like it's equivalent? That's what I'm hoping to get ideas on.
Well, hopefully the DU workshop will help too, because it won't just impact those who need, it'll make the whole project work better, because when you're coming from a hotel
Right.
design to residential, it's totally different.
How many units are the suites?
82.
82? Okay, because, it was 70-something and got butchered into 82. And somewhere in all this, have you got, I'm very familiar with the residential situation there, but have you got residents that you can get feedback from?
Oh, yes. So,
And use that in terms of, and like you said, they're gonna be they're gonna start comparing. And in this way, you can start being ready for it. And it seems like there's really a bit of a different clientele at each property, and it's accommodating that and dealing with that comparison factor, which tends to cause the conflict. But you're right, let's look at what's happening here.
I know MHP is really looking at this too, so if they have people who are like, well, I want somewhere new now, they're doing that and they're getting kind of already expressing that I want somewhere new. They're helping them work faster. They got the okay from DOH to start releasing more vouchers for those at the suites to transition from the PBV over to the tenant-based voucher.
Oh, wow,
So,
okay.
Can you talk a little bit about what intro you've done to Zinnia, to the suites residents?
so we're coffee and conversations. We're always letting them know the next steps, what's going on, letting them know, this is a separate project, so we're managing it. It's not, they can't go through, but we have one resident right now at the suites moving to the lodge next week. So he's transitioning into that type of housing. And so we're letting them know what's coming, letting them know, we plan to do stuff with them together. We're increasing the events at the suite so that we have that resident participation and that they're hearing from us and we can kind of build that relationship. And I think with having Val there now, that's gonna help as well, that she can help.
That's gonna, that'll be huge.
And so we're we've been sharing the plans with them, with coffee and conversations. Tomorrow I'm hoping to have some bigger printouts so they can kind of see what the building looks like and how it's going to sit on the campus. We're letting them know what impacts it's going to have to them. So as things change, we were going to have a drive around the building, and now that's been X. So like we're just keeping them in love. This is going to happen. This, we're still looking for construction in June. It's going to be during business hours and the weekends. So get ready. So and letting them know about right now they access the church parking lot to get over to the shopping center. That's going to be blocked off and.
Yeah.
They're excited that they're not going to have the traffic flying through, so they're seeing some positives with all of this as well.
So that'll be half, construction management for the 15 months that'll be under construction.
Right.
And then also gearing them up for what life will be like after.
And have you set up a venting session?
We might need to come June, July.
You know exactly what I'm talking about, yeah.
And how are we communicating most of it to the residents? Is it through?
The coffee and conversations,
Okay.
we're having the conversations. Corinne's at every single one, and as I'm learning stuff, I'm sharing with her. She's been out there on site walks with different groups, with Public Works, looking at different things, options, so that she can answer questions. A lot of the suites are one-on-one conversations because the residents don't want to. Probably about 30% who show up for coffee and conversations, but the rest are just. Can you tell me? So Corinne's making sure her staff's aware, maintenance is aware. We're all pretty involved.
So in terms of Zinnia, are we going to be responsible for any of the wait lists or filling the vacancies, or we're just more the management side of it?
We're more of the management side and making sure the suites and the Zinnia operate together, physically on site. But we are not. We want to partner and be helpful for the lease-up process, but we have our property managers that will be there, and that's a huge part of lease-up, but officially we've got these pipelines, and I'll be curious, yes.
So we still have to do the tax credit side, so
Right.
we have our whole.
So there's like
how many units
bring
will
them in
be
and then it
through
turns over.
pipeline or vouchers versus the life?
All of it. So all 55 units will be about the PBVs with tax credit.
And you have to qualify them as,
So two separate files, just like the suites.
just like this book. With every funding source and every compliance.
Well, what is supportive services covered?
Do you want to kind of, I don't want to put Val on the spot. Do you want to kind of describe what kind of support services we have at the suites right now?
So Valerie's main role is to provide resources for residents when they need it, to help them find different avenues for things they need. It's just a whole bunch, being there for them, helping them.
Like a concierge service?
Resource
Resources, that's a
Yeah.
good one, more of a resource navigator. The last person in the field, they had a resident who was struggling to figure out how to pay rent or get the dog the stuff they needed. So they helped find avenues to take care of that. One wanted to go on a job interview, but hadn't had a haircut and wanted a haircut. Didn't have the funds for it, so they helped fund the resources and the way to get that, and be there kind of as even an emotional cheerleader for them. How's it going? How are you going through this process? How's your day going? And we provide it not just for our clients, but also MHP clients, because sometimes a tenant may not have a good relationship with their caseworker or resource for MHP, so they will come to ours, resource specialists. So
It really can vary. I mean, it could be that helping somebody fill out the paperwork to get free internet through the federal program, or it's somebody who is sleeping in a tent in their apartment and has no dishes and where we're trying to help them transition, which I think that we have seen we need a lot of. That is a huge focus, is getting people ready for permanent housing, because some are, if you've been living on the streets for years, you just, who knows? It could be anything. You could feel more comfortable in a tent. You could be nervous about taking your stuff to the laundry room. There's a whole gamut of level of services that folks need to be successful in their housing is really what it's about. Helping transition through the stages.
Have you guys looked at doing like almost like a pseudo HOA for the cost sharing for the campus wide? That you guys would be sort of the.
It's more of so the management agreement will come up with like a split, like a cost share split
Okay.
for certain things.
That's probably easier than creating. Don't worry.
Another layer.
After dealing with the spoke, and now we're doing it with Willoughby Corner. So it's 24 acres. So fun.
And that's like 400 units, isn't it?
Yes, and 80 of them will be homeownership, so they'll have their own separate sub-HOA.
Oh jeez.
And I'm writing the rule and regulations.
Nice. Yeah, things, I mean, that's as we make this list of what do we need to consider in this management agreement, the level of who's doing what will gauge some of the cost share.
I'll send you an email with some of the things that I
That would
think
be
you guys
great.
should look at, like security.
Yep.
Um,
We are responsible for security.
yep.
So far we're coordinating our camera systems to be in the LHA network. And we've got building attendants fully staffed at the suites now for 24 hours, well, 23 hours.
22 most days.
Yeah, what is it, like 4 a.m. to 6 a.m. is the quietest, so.
Yeah.
But anyway, so we'll have to make sure we can ramp that up to cover both sides and still make sure that we've got the property manager. I mean, for a PSH, it's really, has to be somebody with special skills. So coordinating all of that together. So anything else that you can think of, either if it's after, just shoot me an email, let me know what ideas you might have for ways that we could make it feel like a community rather than two separate competing places where mix. So
Will they be able to use the amenities in each building?
I think we should have that. I mean, there's nothing that bars them from doing so now except for fobs, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, they don't even do fobs, do we? For the front door.
For the front door.
And what about like events put on by the other partners? Would that be accessible? Like, would everybody be able to, let's say they're putting on, talk about this or a help session for that? Okay, so that'll be that's cool.
I mean, we could surely ramp that up and have more opportunities, especially as we're just getting them to get to know each other.
Right.
Well, and really, maybe even come up with a name for the campus itself too. So
Well, that's, I would like to
Suites
not
and
have the
Zinnia.
suites.
Yeah, so we just gotta come up with a name for both of them or something like that.
We want to change the name so it's cohesive.
Yeah, so when
The
you're
campus
referring to one.
is generally the Sunset campus.
Okay.
So Zinnia at Sunset, some other flower for the suites at Sunset or something. I don't.
Or just call it, the Sunset Campus, so we
Yeah.
just call it that, and that's how all communication goes out to everybody, so it's.
That's a
More
good idea.
inclusive.
Like maybe I'll change our letterheads for the property to Sunset Campus.
Then my only concern is just, if we're working with the other partners, if we're not renting up, if they have open vacancies, can we switch, the allowable units to the different partners?
Yep.
More easily?
That we
Like they're
need
given
to.
so many days or something like that to rent it up, otherwise it's gonna be
We
open
have, like, a
to
wait list
everyone. Yeah,
So MHP has already come to us saying that we have to plan ahead for this because just making sure that we have all that stuff ready to rock because they administer, so the vouchers at Zinnia are state vouchers, they're Division of Housing. And so technically you're supposed to use a statewide list. MHP has worked with them to try and modify that so they have more success with their wait lists. And so we do need to so with the owners of the Element properties, we have to do this management agreement and we also need to start working with MHP and Boulder Shelter to plan for lease up and have what kind of backup plans can we have within the rules of the vouchers that are coming with it.
Does a coordinated entry covers like the whole Denver metro, right?
No, that's just for Boulder
Just for
County.
Boulder County. Could we look at maybe partnering when needed with other?
We could, that's MHP's struggle, is
Yeah.
getting, pulling from the statewide list is either not very successful or it brings its
State
own
vouchers are like the
issues.
worst.
I
Yeah, so we did do our plan with the suites last year, well, when Kathy was still here, we redid it because at first it was just, we had to use the DOH wait list. So we were able to get into the local case conferencing, so we can pull 2 from local case conferencing, 1 from DOH, and so that we could get more of a more local pool and then a faster movement instead of waiting
Yeah.
a half a year for it moving. So
In this case too.
that
Well,
maybe-
there's a balancing act. We have a lot that really feel like we should prioritize it for people with Longmont connections, but also if they're not there,
Yeah.
you have to have a backup, and it might be somebody coming from Denver. So,
So you mentioned one of the state vouchers, what's the issue with that? Is it just timing and then getting back to
They're
you?
just difficult to work with.
a lot of them, the participants are not doc ready. Where so for local case conferencing, they are doc ready, which means they have their birth certificate in hand, driver's license in hand, social security card in hand, which is all stuff that we have to see to be able to start processing. A lot coming off DOH are still missing documents, and so we have to wait 30, 60 days for them to get those
Meanwhile, the
documents.
unit's vacant, no runs being
Right, right, yeah.
So, and
Yeah.
that's part of the struggle with DOH waitlist is that these people are not technically ready or they're not prepared yet to go into housing.
or they don't want to come to Longmont, so you're calling down the list until somebody is ready to come up here.
Do you have any lead time? You know, if we're looking at building the structure, is there lead time where you can start getting before
Yeah, so our plan, I
it
think,
opens?
just my staff alone, we've already started talking that, we want to start at least 90 days prior to that, having that C of O in our hand.
Yeah.
Start qualifying people so that we can just get them all in or have a plan in place with not overburden ourselves with 5 movements a day, but 2 or 3 a day that we can get everybody in at a time.
Are we allowed to do that?
With tax credit.
We weren't able to like have people sign leases ahead of
No, not sign the lease, we did the
Yeah.
lease signing that morning, but
Yeah, okay.
everything else.
Everything else.
Yeah, the regular
Qualification
stuff.
stuff.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
that morning, they come in, do their lease signing, get their keys,
Okay.
do the walkthrough, and then,
So.
yes. And the good thing is Corinne and I have done lease ups of 300 units at a time, and that we did in 90 days. So her and I know we can handle 55 units. So we're not, it doesn't scare us. So we're used to large lease ups, so.
All right, let's go on then to number 8, LHA report, update on operations.
Go ahead, Lisa.
Sure. So I provided the quarterly unit vacancy list, so you guys can see kind of where we're sitting at some of these vacants. And like Aspen Meadows neighborhood, we've exhausted our wait list. It's currently opening up the 12th, which is tomorrow. 1 down unit. We also tomorrow have a state audit over there. They're doing the walkthrough of all the units again. Aspen Meadows Senior, we've called 15 people on the wait list. I've only been able to rent 1. So we're changing the process a little bit again. So if somebody walks into our office, calls the office, and we're going to try to rent 2 of these at those who want to move right now, can call and say, I need to move, the next 2 weeks or 30 days. Take 2 people from there while we're still calling the wait list. Because these people on the wait list, they're signing up, but they don't want to move for a year. They don't want to move for 6 months. They got to give a 90-day notice, or they're in a lease to the end of summer. And we're like, okay, we're going to skip you. Go ahead. We'll call you when we get another vacant.
Keep them on the list, but bump them.
Yeah, so we're as we're calling, Diana's taking very detailed notes of where we're at with those. The Briarwood had 2 move-outs, 2 evictions on the same day, so that's why they're showing. And I think, are any updates on the sale with that? Are we waiting for Briarwood?
No, not yet.
Okay.
Basically, we're considering selling to the Veterans Community Project, and because they have people that are transitioning out of homelessness, that they could use Briarwood as that landing point. And then we already have some people that are already VCP clients that are living there, and generally the value of the land, even though it's a nonprofit, so we'd be negotiating, but that would help us build more units than the 11 that we have.
When are we hoping to have an agreement with that? We're
So-
started talks in March, maybe?
We had,
before?
yes. I'm mixing it up with the CPWD and
Right,
right.
yeah, you got 2
Yeah.
going on right now.
Yep. So we're waiting to hear back from BCP about their price points. What else am I missing?
I think that's it on PCC right now. For jump back to CPWD, I know
Right.
Sarah and I are meeting with them to start our agreements for supportive services after, once the cell, that's kind of part of the cell, is that they're gonna provide services for LHA and the city ongoing for to help with
The
the,
reduced price.
yes, the reduced price. So Sarah and I are meeting with them, I believe, around the 21st, to start those talks and what we wanna see from them in the deal. Fall River, we still have just the one unit down for meth, and then Gregory, the new manager, is going to be moving on site, hopefully around May 1st. Hearthstone and Lodge, we have exhausted both of their wait lists, so those are also opening tomorrow. And those are for the 30% PBV, so 62 plus. The suites, she's been getting quite a few rentals, so our time frame for turns have gone down. MHP has actually been pretty proactive for getting applicants, but some of them aren't just ready to commit. So at least we're having those meetings instead of just waiting for months and months and months. They are getting the applicants into us, but then we're just waiting for them to be ready. So, so she does have a pipeline of MHP people who are sitting on the back burner right now. They're just not ready yet to transition. I think they want to get through the spring where they're at, which is unique for MHP. Spring Creek, their wait list, we've called 45 people for the basic units. We've been able to work with Senior Center actually to sell the one that, actually it's not even on here yet, but Senior Center, we're working closely with them for these properties that have open wait lists, so they know of an emergency need too, that we can help filter that through. So Spring Creek does have one of these now rented for an emergency. And then Village Place, we have just the 2 vacants that we will be holding for resyndication.
Lisa, on Village Place, my understanding is you're going to paint the interiors of all the units or just the ones that are empty?
We're still figuring out if we can afford to do all of the units or just the ones that have not yet been recently painted.
So then as people move out, would they be painted?
Oh, yes.
Yes.
I'm sure.
They get painted up.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's not bad.
Yes. The occupancy report, still sitting at 93%, holding strong. We're hoping now that we're out of the snow and everything, and we're keeping our wait list open instead of closing them. We previously would open a wait list for 30 days, 60 days, but we decided to keep all wait lists open so that we have current names. So as we're calling 45 people, those 45 people are being moved. We got 45 people coming up, so.
So it's gonna stay out there.
Yes, so I think that will help us in the long run to increase these numbers come the next few months.
Oh, great, okay.
Few meth units still down on the current status. This was just as when I did the reports. Aspen Meadows neighborhood, we have the 1 down unit, and that one is the one that's out of our insurance. We have already exited our insurance, so we've already had one last Monday, had a planning powwow meeting with city staff, risk management, HR, everybody trying to figure out a good way to move forward on this.
And cover it other ways. Either we're gonna talk to Habitat because they do like community build days for non-Habitat properties. So we're gonna ask them as a first route, and then we do city employee build days for Veterans Community Project and Habitat. So we could do that, but there's a lot of moving pieces with that and coordinating it. So, but we are trying to figure out ways to get these units. Of course we wouldn't they're all clean. They get remediated first, and it's just the rebuild pieces that we're looking for ways to have community, basically volunteer opportunities.
Yep.
It's a community benefit to have this unit open. So that's what we're trying to do.
Since the last meeting, our Aspen Senior meth unit has been cleaned, renovated, and moved into. Fall River, we still have 1 meth unit down, and that one is slated to be ready end of May. End of May. Hearthstone Lodge, nothing there. We did have the bed bug issue a couple months ago. Residents still are in fear of bed bugs, so we still have pest control going out weekly doing inspections, but those inspections are coming back negative. The suites, They have 3 down units, 1 is a flood and 2 are meth. And then Spring Creek, no down units, everything, we have 2 rental apps pending. Village Place, we're holding those units, so. Moving along, getting those units ready. At least our turnaround times are going down. I know when I started, we had units sitting vacant for 300-400 days, so now we're getting most of these down to.
Those are regular units, wow.
Some of them were meth, but just no follow through on the insurance claims, and so we've gotten that. It's a weekly thing with insurance, the adjusters, getting all that worked through. And then for the property updates, coffee and conversations are scheduled for the rest of the year. So if those who need or want copies of all the dates, I have printouts with all the coffee and conversation dates. We've added a Cinco de Mayo event for all the properties, and I have those dates in here printouts for anybody who wants those as well. You're more than welcome to join us, volunteer to help us on these Cinco de Mayo events. Staff is going to be cooking. We're working on spring declutter events at all the properties. Mass notices went out. Working through the final stages of scheduling dumpsters for all the sites. So if residents have larger items that they want to get rid of, at the same time we're cleaning out our storage areas, we're working with our HR department, who has a new volunteer coordinator, that if residents have items they want to get rid of and have no way of disposing or getting it to the dumpster, if they can get it to the door, volunteers and our staff will get it from the door to the dumpster. So I think this is going to be big. We have quite a few people who are excited.
I haven't seen any notice on that.
No, we just started scheduling the dumpsters yesterday.
Okay,
So,
so
just the notice that we're
of
cleaning out.
What can be decluttered? and-
Yes, that's
and
coming.
how? Okay.
So Corinne got all the pricing yesterday and started scheduling the dates yesterday. So this is all scheduled. We have to wait for the college move-outs the first week of May. They told us that we have to, the dumpster people said there are no dumpsters available the first week of May. So then we're gonna do 1 property a week so that it doesn't overburden my staff as well. Because we know the suites, Aspen neighborhood, we have a lot of appliances as well we wanna get rid of and things like that. So do it all week by week by week.
And is there gonna be a donation option?
Yes, so we're working with Senior Center. They have a few agencies that will come through and walk through. And then we could just, and then Wally and I actually talked last week about setting up one of the storages at the suites for when residents move out or their the next of kin want to donate their stuff. We can go in, test it, store it for 30 days, pest control it, and then we have a resident who moves in out of homelessness or other circumstances who have nothing. We'd have shop. You can kind of shop.
Yeah.
That's nice.
Yeah.
Right,
So,
right.
yeah, no, that's fantastic. I was also just thinking in terms of decluttering, and I'm not saying doing this now, but it's just sometime in the future, I'm thinking, well, I need to get on this, but it might be like a good kind of event or community thing to do like, not a garage sale, but like a yard sale for like everybody, like a big, just like everybody in the development gets together and, we kind of notify people, let the public know, and it could be a fun thing to do and another way to declutter and get rid of stuff. Yeah, something like that.
So those are the big things we're working on. Just some property updates. The suites we've already updated with Beth and Valerie's hiring. Aspen Senior, we're still working through the flooring issues. Metropolitan State University held a kickoff at Coffee and Conversations for a 1 to 2 nutritional education and activities partnership. Aspen Neighborhood, still the 1 meth unit down there, and we have the CHAFA inspection tomorrow. Hit on CPWD and BCP, the Village Place, MSU, Metropolitan State University held a kickoff for Coffee and Conversations. The partnership, the engagement with the residents didn't seem to be as engaged as Aspen and all that, and so we've talked to MSU about possibly moving that from Village Place over to Hearthstone and Lodge, so that we can get more participation and really give them the data and stuff that they want. So, and do you want to go about that history of why we're doing this a little bit?
Mm-hmm. So, when Chrisman 2 was getting planned out, so that's the 83 units being constructed right there behind the Murphy's gas station at 66 in Main. MSU Denver contacted the developer, MGL, and said, would you mind if we they wanted to use like a new build as an opportunity for their graduate students to do public health research for folks that are in the low income levels and basically moving in to a new place. So that property, so they wanted to do that at Chrisman 1 and then add on the new people at Chrisman 2 to compare. So they went and started their work at Chrisman 1. These are college, grad students. And we do not manage Chrisman 1. We will someday, but the property managers did not really help. They didn't help make it, they didn't encourage it, or they were kind of rude to the kids. So, they showed up and they were in Halloween costumes, had a candy to hand out to the kids, and they just had no interest.
They have one participant in 6 months.
Yeah. So that was just a disappointing experience for them, and then we felt bad. They're just college kids trying to do research. And so we said, you know what, we have really engaged community managers. We've got properties. We know that the people would want to just participate. So let's try it at ours instead. So we're giving them basically an opportunity to complete their research with more commitment from the property management side to help encourage participation as much as possible and be welcoming for the kids. And so the kids, they might be, who knows what age they are, but they felt like kids that were getting dissed.
But that really did help at Aspen Meadows.
Good.
Because with your involvement and a little bigger explanation, because these are grad students, they haven't spoken in front of a lot of people, and we kind of felt that. But that getting management involved in that coordinating, cooperating, that was the message. And what concerns a lot of us is that, especially low income, the worst food is the cheapest. And that's where it goes, because you can get more of it. And it's learning that you can keep, lettuce alive in a certain way for 10, 15 days, and you can have it handy. Learning those kind of things is going to be important, because that, our economy makes the bad food the most accessible. And but you're right, getting management involved is critical. It's critical. So you did a great job.
And Aspen they were really surprised at the response of surveys that they got back at Aspen Senior. They were just like, wow. And then residents, Corinne had extras, and anybody who didn't attend, she got to the doors, and she was giving surveys into the whole week. Almost everybody in the building participated.
Yeah.
So, and
I really appreciate that.
yeah, so it was the data that they've been wanting and yearning for.
Yeah.
And is it a time study? They're gonna do an initial survey and then.
Yeah, so they did
follow up
the initial surveys. We're hoping to get MSU out to Lodge and Hearthstone this next week to start their initial surveys there. And then based on those surveys, they plan, they're taking the summer off, but then they'll come back in the fall with all their farm stand produce. They bring with them even. They work with local farms, bring produce in, incorporate that into cooking classes, nutrition labels, and really teach like dedicated things to the group.
Yeah.
So
It's fantastic.
So we're excited about that partnership. Spring Creek Fall River, Gregory, the new manager, has hit the floor running over there. Hit a couple roadblocks at first, but now it's going pretty smoothly. I've attended quite a few meetings over there with the residents groups the last few weeks. We're getting higher attendance. We're going to be taking over food distributions. Working with ElderShare, we've attended a couple of their food, and they're like, well, they're not really our volunteers, but we want them, so we're actually going to do a tour of ElderShare, my staff, going to go see what they want, how to figure out how to get more residents to participate in ElderShare, even if they're not able to come to the distributions, and really form a partnership with them. And so we're going to pilot Spring Creek and Fall River first, and really start working on that. They gave us a whole bunch of ideas of how, if we have residents who need food outside of ElderShare, how we can get that. They want, so my staff is all going to take their little volunteer course, register online, and be able to go shopping if we know of a resident who's in need. who, like, somebody moves in, they don't, or they're having a really bad month, they don't have food. Elder Share is giving us those resources where we can go into their warehouses and go shopping for those unique situations and all that as well. And then if somebody's homebound and can't make it to a distribution, how we can support those residents in the meantime as well. So, and looking at it so far, talking with Elder Share, it might take a manager an hour to be able to accommodate 3 or 4 residents in a month. So so we figured that's very little toll on us, and we can make a big impact. So. Carson Lodge, not a lot going on, and then all our positions have been filled except for we have one open housing choice voucher specialist, and we conducted interviews last week. Tracy's been out on vacation, so hopefully we have a decision and more information later today or tomorrow on how those all came out. Building attendants hitting the floor running at suites. It is unbelievable the impact having 3 building attendants there. They're doing light maintenance and janitorial work and everything. Corinne walked in last Monday. She called me. She's like, Lisa, I have never seen this building so clean in 2 years. She's like, it is amazing how it looks. And so it's having somebody there dedicated to it. And
is there a change in the resident response? Because now that you've got so much coverage, sometimes there's a reaction that says, oh, they're paying attention to us. And that starts
some
to
residents are like, wow, it's nice to know somebody's here. It's cut down on maintenance calls after hours because that was our #1 lockout site.
Oh.
Because of the doors, the old hotel doors, they automatically lock as somebody walks out. So over a 8-month study that I counted every after hours call, 90% of our calls were lockouts, and 60% of those calls were all the suites. So now maintenance, except for that short little gap, doesn't have to go out to do lockouts. The building attendants handle the lockouts. They handle minor toilet clogs, stuff like that, little things. They try to troubleshoot the work order or the after hours emergency before even calling our after hours maintenance. So, and it's helping Lydell out because the overnight building attendants go into the turns and start cleaning trash, bagging up the trash, anything they can do kind of quietly after hours, painting walls. So it's helping Lydell work through his turns faster because it is a high turnover property with the type of housing we have. So it's kind of helping everybody out. Corinne went in Saturday morning. She forgot to do it Friday, so she went in Saturday morning and printed out lists for both the weekend building attendants. And then she comes in on Monday. They're all checked off of what they were able to accomplish. Work orders attached. So it's kind of nice for her too because she knows the building's being taken care of, and it's allowed us to change our janitorial schedule so that we have more of Alicia now on the other sites. And so Thursday morning, my staff and I are sitting down and kind of coming through, making her a priority list at each site when she's on site, but it's going to give her a chance to be at each property 1 full day every other week. So instead of just 4 hours, she'll get a full day of cleaning in. So she can do some of the deeper cleans and stuff like that.
Okay, yeah.
So
That's something, what you just talked about was something when we were brainstorming. That evidence that this has been done at XYZ for that person, that kind of documentation and the notification quickly that this is the step they're in. There's something about that I could see using it in so many entities involved in managing. That just kind of clicked. That's a neat way to do it. Pick it up from where you know where it stopped, and you can pick it up and go on.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly how you do that considering all the.
Well, I think it depends on how we end up staffing it, like Alicia, or do we?
And after this,
bring in new
the
people?
work of who does what, then it's how to do it, and that's where the connections are going to be. Yeah, that's cool.
I think really changing that from having that on-site security company and changing to the building attendants where we have the control has made a huge difference.
Yes.
And the residents see it. They're like, it's so clean in here now, and
it feels good.
yes.
Yeah.
So.
Anything on public health and safety updates?
No, Sarah's not here, but I would just say we're using Sarah Arney for a bunch of things. She's helping us with one-on-one resident meetings, she's just got a huge peer support background, so that's been helpful. And then she's working on our system-wide new cameras and our meth detectors that are hopefully, we have something being shipped from New Zealand right now to test them out. And she's just jumping in on a bunch of things for us.
We've had a lot of, the property's still remaining low calls for service, so maybe one call every other day, and it's nothing like really involving residents or properties, it's just like a nuisance or, loud noise, calls like that. So she's attending all the coffee and conversations with me, so really pushing the public safety, if you feel not sure to call the police, call the police. If it's going on in the parking lot, call the police. She's really advocating, you use your resources and, don't wait for management to come in the next day. So.
And then she's actually, we're kicking off a pretty formal peer support program for staff. Because being a property manager, you see a lot. You see some really stressful situations. You see people's life struggles. You hear everyone's stories every day. It's just a lot of intake. And so, and sometimes it's traumatic what you end up being involved with. So we're having Sarah help our community managers as well. Just make sure we have resources for the stress and it's everything that you see. So
I wanted to thank Sarah too. She passed along some of the information we talked about at the last meeting we had on the meth detectors, a couple test reports. It'd probably be better to just wait till she's here, chat with her next time. I thought that was super helpful. I just wanted to know if she did pass along any info, maybe to you, Tom, or you, Molly, about the other places in Colorado and the United States where I might be able to get some info about how the detectors have been implemented and any data that they've got. That's the only thing I was missing. I think that she did send us everything they had from the New Zealand company.
Yeah. So there's no one in the US yet. We're trying to be the first.
That's what I thought, but then at the last meeting, Sarah said that there was it was happening in Colorado and other places.
They're talking to a couple places, but nobody has them installed and functioning in data yet.
Okay.
But we are trying to schedule time to talk with a New Zealand housing authority, the equivalent of a housing authority there, to see how they've been implemented. So that's getting set up. Where we're at right now is it's so technical. They're sending over a SIM card to make sure the SIM card works with our network. And if that works, then we get the whole device and then start our pilot. So the networking thing has been a huge challenge because you basically have to pay for it's the equivalent of a cell phone line per device. You can buy it through Verizon and pay $17 a month for every single device, or you can try and use Nextlight, and we have LTE in the city. We're trying to do our own thing, see if that would work. And then you're working with an international company. We need to make sure all of their pieces that's fine. I was going to say sorry. Making sure the components are meeting the Chinese, the regulations, protecting it against Chinese components and all of those things.
That's a lot.
It's a lot. So I'm so glad Sarah's helping with that.
That's probably we ran into on the cameras, but I think we're moving forward again on the cameras. She's been out with a company, walking all the sites. We've designated locations for all the cameras, getting all the cameras on one LHA network. She's been working on the Spring Creek and Fall River have very poor cell reception inside units. Some units don't even get a cell. You can't even use your cell in the office. So she's working with the city and other agencies and departments to get repeaters throughout the building that will work with all cell services so that the residents have that connectivity, because it's lacking in that whole HOA area.
Yes, it is.
I don't even have cell service at home, and I'm about a mile away. Yeah. So
We have, Nextlight in the building though, right?
sorry, what?
We have Nextlight in those buildings?
Yes,
Yes,
for
like
for
Wi-Fi.
residents, yeah.
For them, yeah, okay, so that's,
And
Oh,
we
and,
have-
yes, and
Alright.
connections. in
do
the
we have
units.
free Wi-Fi? It's like if you go hallway or the.
No, not,
No.
So you basically have to be in your unit in order to have
You're
some
right.
sort of Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
Okay.
so we are working with Next Light, hopefully in the next year to get, the pub INET or whatever, the public internet
Yeah.
through, with the repeaters throughout the building, so that at least we have internet in the common spaces
Cool.
and stuff like that,
All
so.
right. Anything from Harold at all, or kind of covered everything?
Erica says it's been a week, so we're not sure. So we could skip that one for
Okay.
today.
Any other business that anybody has?
Go ahead. I was just gonna follow up on, the concern about the doors.
Mhm.
So has there been any,
Nothing yet. We've requested bids from Trident, which is our fire company,
Yeah.
to see, what the magnets would be. They don't even have us on schedule yet. Dave and I have a powwow meeting Thursday afternoon to kind of go through some of these open items, see,
Yeah.
what do we have to do to get these companies out? Because I know a lot of them, Trident, were waiting for fire extinguisher replacement, and they can't even get out till the end of the month.
yeah, Harold had mentioned,
Harold's calling.
Maybe he's outside.
Hello? Yeah.
Okay.
He's let in.
Front door?
Yes.
We'll come back to 8.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll come back.
I was just gonna say that there's a nonprofit that operates in Boulder County called the Boulder County Housing Corporation. And they're sort of like a partner agency with BCHA in the county. And we're partnering with them as an administrative limited partner for our tax credit deal at Willoughby Corner. But we need to appoint a representative from BCHA on their board. We have one, we need two. So I just wanted to put it out there, if you or someone you know is interested in serving on a board that only meets 2 times a year. It's really easy. We just have to have representation for the requirements of our investor.
Did you say it has to be a BCHA representative?
You
Or just-
represent BCHA appoints you. Because there's like the
So it's
BCHA
it could be an
board.
outside person?
Yeah, it can't be a BCHA employee,
There
but
you
it
go.
could be anybody else. You're just there to represent BCHA's interests, and we just have to have that partnership because it affects the tax credit partnership and
Yeah.
how they elect their tax benefits, so we have to make sure that it all works for 15 years. So we just need another appointee, and it can't be me, so. If you know somebody who wants to join a board that doesn't do a lot and isn't a huge time commitment, that's probably a good one. And it does good stuff. It funds a lot of programs, especially, they actually fund a lot of programs at CASA here in Longmont. So it's a great organization to be part of, and it affects housing, so.
Is it equivalent to our LHTC?
Probably.
Yeah.
They don't do
It's a
development,
nonprofit
they're just like,
corporation.
yeah, they just funnel money. At one point, somebody wanted to donate a house to BCHA, but we couldn't take that, so they did it, and then they ended up giving it for free to a member of the community who did it, so they do great stuff. Just restructuring their corporation so that we can partner with them, so.
Okay.
If you know anybody who wants to join or anything, just contact me, and
Is it like an application process or it's just contact?
it's literally, we appoint them, as long as you're like, yes, I'll do it. And then I just wanted, I know we talked about Proposition 123 last meeting, and I know Harold he'll probably have an update as well. But they're changing a lot of the requirements, like the 90-day fast track process. They're putting that out for 2 years, so we thought. So hopefully that will be a great source. I watched a lot of their webinars that they've had recently, so I'm excited about what could happen there.
Do you think, we're doing the deep dive on the baseline and what it would take if Longmont as the city participated. So we're hopeful, but we still have to do the deep dive before we figure out the plan.
Reach out to the Regional Housing Partnership, because we've been talking about that, because there's other municipalities that are like, yeah, we want to do it, but we don't have the staff capacity to even come up with a baseline. So if you need help with that, I think that could be something that the partnership takes on if necessary, or just helps with, to take some of the heat off of staff. And then of course, I didn't know this until I watched one of the webinars, but the 3% a year is actually more like 9% over 3 years. It doesn't have to be 3% a year, so that's kind of.
And they count it differently than we do. So
Yeah.
that's where we have to see what we look like.
Yeah,
So it's on average then in 3 years?
Over, yeah,
Over that
over-
3-year period, okay.
over 9 years. No, 9% over 3 years.
9%
Yeah.
over 3 years, okay.
So I wanted, while we're on other business, before we jump back up to Harold's report, I just wanted to mention 2 things. We do have the vacancies open for, because Jean and Arlene's terms expire in June. So the application process is open until April 21st. And so the interview process will be coming after that. And you all are still eligible to apply for your positions. So that's just a heads up what's coming. And then my last update I wanted to mention is that tonight, at City Council tonight, I'm running through an amendment to our CDBG action plan because we have COVID-related CDBG special funds that are pretty challenging to use. And we've had to rearrange to make sure we meet the expenditure deadlines that are coming up here very quick. And so we decided, and it's gonna be decided on by council tonight, about funding accessibility improvements at LHA properties. Because as part of our property conditions assessments that we did as part of the voluntary compliance agreement with HUD, we have a list of things that could be done at each property, and it's kind of varies, but adding sensory units for hearing and visual impairment, and then general either like ramps or restriping parking to make sure we have those right size stalls for ADA parking. So we'll be putting through an agreement with LHA, the city to LHA, to do about $100,000 of improvements for accessibility across all the properties. Because disabled folks are disproportionately affected by COVID. So that was a really good use, and we could get it done quick. So that will be happening, and we have to complete the improvements by June. So it's like very, very quick. So we're getting quotes right now, getting all the agreements in order, and so that will be coming. We're not doing it here because this property will be covered with the big project, but at all the other ones we'll be doing stuff. That's my last update.
Do you have anything to report on?
Sorry I'm late, I was in
Yeah.
interviews that went long,
Yeah.
and then I couldn't figure out which key. It didn't work, so.
There is, but that's
So
for all
down
properties.
I just have one thing.
So, at the risk of repeating what you've gone over, are there any questions that you all have for me that I can address?
I mean, do you have anything else to add? I mean, with the meth detectors, I mean, I think Molly said that they're gonna come in and we're gonna be testing out the SIM cards and that. Is that basically where we're?
Yeah, that's what
Yeah.
Sarah updated. I think we're just trying to figure out where it is in transit right now. But they are aware we obviously won't pay for anything until we receive it. But it's pretty critical, just based on what we're seeing on insurance requirements and what the deductibles are set at. So we've got to figure something out. We can't financially continue down this road. So.
And any movement in talking with the insurance company too about testing for meth before moving? Have we brought that up at all, or?
So we kind of have a workaround idea that where we gradually phase into that conversation with them and have some data to show them, like, this is not gonna be a huge spike, and then obviously they understand that it should tail off, but they're worried about the spike. And so we had said, let's start at one property, do testing at turns, unit turns. So we test. If we have to do anything, we take care of it and then lease it, and we say, you are moving into a clean unit. If we ever test again, it's basically you. And so we've talked about doing that maybe at one property just to start getting some data and really tell them what that spike actually would look like. and then kind of phasing it in, assuming everything doesn't go haywire.
Yeah, Molly's given me some proposals. I think even in those proposals, we're gonna have to read the insurance documents to understand, do certain actions invalidate the insurance policy, so that's some of the work that we have to do. We actually theoretically talked about, as we're looking at re-syndication here, that may be a way to step into it, simply because we know we have to hold 8 units to come in as we're starting the work, and we may be able to try to create at least some data that can help inform what the percentage actually is. Because the challenge right now, when we looked at the percentages on this, and we said, well, how many unit turns have we had? And Lisa gave us a number, and then we said, well, we've had what, 8? Or
6.
6.
So 6 out of 25.
6 out of 25, so that percentage is kind of high. But, you know, we have a pretty stable population, which doesn't necessarily let you translate those into it, because most of these come out of some eviction process that we're going through, which you obviously have issues. So we're trying to figure out how to create a baseline data set so we can go to them and say, here's what it probably looks like in reality versus what you're seeing that typically is born out of evictions. And I think there will be different characteristics per property too. And so we've got to work through all of those issues. We're trying to pull it together.
So trying to just tell the story. So we have 6 down units out of 462 that are related to meth, and that is not a huge percentage. And those are basically born out of us knowing that there's an eviction, there's cause or something. And most of our unit turns are not meth related, but it's just being able to tell that story to insurance and building that over time and testing it instead of full bore.
So we don't really know how big a problem this is?
Without testing every unit, we do not know. We test more than most property managers. I would say that when we're looking at the numbers, doing the detectors for 462 units, I mean, that's a pretty penny, upfront and ongoing. But if we can do that and it works, then it is worth it on the cost side. 1 unit down is many of those detectors, the cost of it. And then also, if that could be a model for the region, the Boulder County, Boulder, they want to know what ends up happening. We said for private landlords, having, a $600 one time plus like maybe $30 a month for ongoing, maybe that is worth it for a smaller portfolio, because that's when they're maybe your only resources as a private landlord to even do anything about this. So it's just the impacts could be so good.
Yeah, I mean, I looked at the data pretty closely, and if it's correct, I know it's just 2 examples. They're super sensitive. I mean, the amount of meth basically that one person would smoke in one day is 175 times more than what it would detect. So that might open up an issue with insurance too. I'm not saying like we don't want to know, but we definitely have a problem where, they're testing for an end product that could possibly be brought into the units, and then the insurance people are like, well, we want that data, we're entitled to that data. And we've got super sensitive detectors that are maybe not even detecting meth manufacturing per se, but I think that's a concern just from an insurance standpoint as well.
And from a tenant rights standpoint too,
Yes.
if somebody just walks by, is
I
that
have a
you?
big problem with that too. I'm concerned about that as
So
well.
you have to set that sensitivity at the right
I
place.
think there's a lot of issues.
So the sensitivity issue is you can adjust, so you can set the levels and the thresholds on it. The challenge is the contamination in units is not just from the manufacturing of that. Some of the highest levels we've seen are actually related to just smoking them. And so, financially speaking, from an operational perspective, you have a significant contamination that's about $100,000 to deal with, which wipes out the insurance policy. So I don't know if they've talked to you about this, but in terms of where the organization sits financially, we're having to figure out how do you rehabilitate a unit without insurance dollars coming in.
Yeah, no, it's a mess for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't doubt that, I just think that I just seems like there's a lot of issues that come up with that from many different standpoints. I just think it's a good conversation to keep having, and maybe when we get the detectors,
Yeah.
because I know there's been some issue with that, the main transit, and the more concrete issues will come up and we can address them then, or.
Well, there needs to be a balance between,
Uh-huh.
you know, tenants' rights and
Right.
their knowledge of what's going on versus what, you know, where we're testing in units.
I think that's right.
So what's the chance we're opening up a unit back on this?
Based on what we see, if we talk about 6 units at any given time out of 462, the chances of, and not all of those are rebuilds, some of those are cleans, they're minor level contamination. So I would say that the chances of having a spike of rebuilds is quite low. We might have some cleans, which are low level price points compared to a rebuild, and then the idea is that you prevent more over time.
You know, what you want to do is catch it early so your remediation cost is lower versus letting it accumulate. And, you know, Molly and I talked about this a little bit. The other component of this is I think communities and individuals generally are getting more educated on this. And, you know, I've talked to some friends that are realtors, and it wouldn't surprise me in, you know, the very near future or near future that when people are looking at renting places, they do that on their own. And I just think that's where the world's moving. And then you have to deal with it. And so there may not be an escape moment in this. And so I think the more we can limit the severity of the issue, the better we're going to be financially. Because the other thing that we're seeing creeping up is when these units, I mean, we're dealing with an issue now where, like, the unit popped in October. The one where tax law comes into play.
Amen.
And so it hit in November, but the way it hit time-wise creates a problem with tax law in terms of the tax credit they give because the units have to be habitable. And so then you start having an issue on the tax credit side.
Yeah.
So these things start snowballing on you pretty quick. And
So, just to add on, if your unit is not habitable by December 31st of every year, then you can't claim the tax credit in the next year for that unit. And so that becomes an issue for us if we aren't, and we're in a rock and a hard place if a unit tests positive in any time in the end of the year. But if we don't get it cleaned, remediated, rebuilt, whatever, by December 31st, then our investors are on our back saying, what are you doing? So
even if it was
the
tenant,
pressure is coming from all directions now, and we just keep finding more ways for the pressure to happen too.
even if it's tenant
Yep.
cause, it's still
Yes.
down, you consider down.
Yes. Yeah, because once you report it to the state, they pull your CO until you remediate.
Well, you can have a unit down all year and get it habitable by 12/31, and then you can count the credit.
Makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
It's IRS driven, so the chances of changing it, but yeah, it's crazy. You go down in January 15th and you don't bring it back up until December, you're good. It goes down November and you bring it up in April, different issue, shorter period of time. So you have all of these balls that you're trying to really juggle, and there's just little points all over the place where you have to kind of stay on top of this. So obviously then, the earlier you get it, the faster the turnaround is. You don't have the unit offline and those issues, so.
Yeah, so really, if we did have a discovery, I mean, I'm just throwing out like anytime like July 1st after, they're not gonna get the tax credit, more than likely.
Unless it's a quick clean.
Unless it's a quick claim.
Unless it's quick.
Yeah, right,
Yeah.
exactly. So it's like we find something in the second half of the year.
Yeah.
So I don't think IRS code anticipated meth when it was written into
Right.
this rule. So,
Should that factor into when we test units?
Yeah.
Only test.
There are
units in
some of us
January.
that only test at
test
the
on
beginning of
January
the year.
1st.
Seriously, like if that's the case, then you only test units
Yep.
the first 3 months of the year.
Most of our challenges are for cause.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure, but if you were gonna go into the model where you're testing.
Yeah.
Like if you got a report from the police that someone got arrested for meth smoking somewhere else, not in your unit, you now want to go test the unit, but it's December 21st. You're gonna wait. You can. It's from the moment you tested, no.
if it's October, I mean, then you've got 3 months of possible meth activities happening in there, it's gonna
Yeah.
be
And
worse.
you can
You
go
wanna
from
get
a
it out.
clean to
Yeah.
a full vet.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, for if you're gonna go to the routine testing model, maybe
Yeah.
schedule your routine testing.
Right.
Yeah, and that's where the detectors actually probably make most sense in brand new units or units that have been remediated, because that's your baseline. You know it's
Yeah.
clean, you know you can get through it. I think how they work in existing units, that's
Because it's hard to
where
attribute
the
it.
brain damage
Well, we
starts.
could not
You
attribute
couldn't
it
attribute it to the current
to a
tenant.
person,
Yeah.
but, yeah. So,
Well, depending on the circumstances.
Well, if you knew
Unless
they got
there's
arrested
cause.
for smoking meth somewhere else or whatever, yeah.
Circumstances actually, like let's say you had a situation where you did work in the unit and you know something was replaced that can't be that could not have been contaminated. And then you find contamination on that,
Yeah,
then it's a different
like an appliance.
Right. So there's nuances all over the place, but
There's like a mental gymnastics you have to go through with every situation. It's not like you can have a clean cut policy.
and the state, they are running some legislation because the meth laws were drafted for housing. And so there's an inherent conflict in public spaces. And you see that in the library. So I know Boulder County Health, I talked to them, it's a completely different situation in a public space versus housing in terms of the amount of time you're exposed to it and the surfaces. So I know there's some legislation being drafted on that. Or it may have already dropped. But that has more to do with public spaces. So we'll see. It's just, it's not going away, and there's new drugs coming out constantly. Just heard of one that's in Syria that may be similar, but it's in the Middle East, so we'll see. Outside of that, on housing, there's, I forgot what the Senate bill number is. The state dropped it, and it's in the Senate. And basically, the legislation is basically saying that for affordable and attainable housing, it basically becomes a use by right. It's from 213 from a state perspective. Everybody's opposing it right now. Almost Colorado Municipal League, the County Association. I was supposed to testify last Thursday and finally bugged out at 6:30 because we've been there all day. But basically, the city's opposing it because it asserts home rule. And so home rule is vastly different than statutory cities or counties in the way that it was doing it. They actually exempted counties, oddly enough, from this, from having some of those requirements. But I think what I heard in the testimony from CML, everyone basically said no one disagreed with the what or the premise. Everyone disagreed with the how.
It was like they were trying to put too much in with no mechanism to enforce it, unfunded mandates.
Yeah.
It didn't really, in my opinion, do a lot for affordability. It put a lot of pressure on municipalities to create these regional partnerships that may or may not work for regions and totally disregard regional partnerships that already exist. And I reviewed it with our team, from the BCHA, it's different from the county. The county's like, it doesn't affect us. But then me, I'm like, well, we actually build in all of these municipalities, and how would this work? And so it seemed like it was just trying to do too much all at once when they could have just rolled out like a phased out bill.
Yeah,
Tackling small bits at a time.
Yeah. our biggest issue was that it usurped our land use authority as a city. It did get to some things that really did deal with affordability, like they had a provision, we deal with this here in Longmont, so the city council adopts land use regulations regarding accessory dwelling units, which if you look nationally, accessory dwelling units are a solution to the affordable attainable housing crisis. The difference in that conversation though is in Longmont, there are so many housing home ownership associations that the accessory dwelling units really then get focused in very specific areas of the community because the way the law is currently written, homeowners associations can, their covenants in their system can override, so you can't necessarily do it. And so you heard a lot of cities say, we kind of get that idea, that makes sense. Not that it makes it a use by right, but at least it goes in the traditional land use process where you have a hearing and some other things and people can engage in the conversation. I think the takeaway, who knows, this may pass. Even with all this opposition, it may pass on party lines. But if it doesn't pass, one of the things we're starting to think about is, as cities, and this isn't really a Longmont issue, we actually comply with 90% of what that legislation's saying in terms of our land use policies and what we're doing. It is directed, I think, at communities that have put restrictions in place to not allow for the development of more dense mixed-use housing types. And people said that in the testimony, and one planner, I believe, from, I forgot where he was from, he basically said, look, we know why you're doing this. You're doing this for very specific cities. Why don't you just deal with those cities? He didn't call them out, but if you Google and you look at growth caps and things, you can find out probably who they're talking about. I think the lesson for cities in this is, we know what they want at the state level, and we're going to trying to figure out how we talk to the council about this, but I think if cities don't make the adjustment and start moving in this direction, whether it's this year, this session, probably, hopefully not this session, next session, session after next, they're going to drop something to deal with this issue. Because if you, and we're going to try to bring the state demographer in to talk to the city council, we probably will invite this group. If you listen to the state demographer, the housing issue becomes very clear in what the problem is. You have people that are in houses that have transitioned as a family. I'm a prime example. My kids are getting in college, they're about to fully go out, but they're staying in their homes because they can't afford to find another home that they can downsize into. So that market's becoming stagnant because people are staying in their homes. When you look at the building cycle that we've gone into as Colorado, it's never really caught up. And then when you look at where millennials are starting to move into the home buying piece, it's just a perfect storm coming in. And so if the state's looking at that data and they know what we need, they will drop something, I think, if as cities we don't start moving holistically in that direction. And I would even argue now counties too. So it'll be an interesting conversation. It's kind of akin to Metro District legislation where they kept saying, you need to tighten up, you need to tighten up. And places were tightening up and they just kept dropping legislation to tighten it up. And so it'll be an interesting thing to watch over the next 3 to 5 years.
Does the city of Longmont have plans for creating some incentives for affordabilities with ADUs? Because the issue I took with the narrative part of that bill was the idea that some low-income family is somehow going to get a home and then have all this money, $200,000 lying around to build an ADU to create income for themselves. Like that's never going to happen. Like I see ADUs as a housing solution 20 years down the road, not right now. It's not going to be immediate.
We've created designs for ADUs, so you don't have to necessarily go into the design cost associated with it. I think if you're willing to hit the affordability requirements, and we can bring in the existing incentives that we have. So, I mean,
there's still cost, I mean, you
Yeah,
still have to
all
build it,
of
but
the
we have
costs.
stock plans that if you commit to renting it to an income qualified family, which we TBD on if that's gonna, we'll just see. It's not rolled out yet. We
Right.
have it. We haven't rolled it out because we haven't figured out,
Compliance.
what that incentive for making it affordable should exactly look like.
Yeah,
But we do have the stock plans in hand.
that's nice because
There'll
this
be
didn't
shorter
address any of that.
entitlements, yeah, shorter entitlements, and you don't have to pay for design costs.
Well, and that's the other point to this legislation is, you know, they don't understand the operational issues. They got into some things about which code you design to. And they said, well, if you don't do it, then we're gonna make you change, boom, here. It's like, we plan on code cycles. And so we tend to be on have the most updated code set adopted. But we plan that 2 years out because the work that you have to do to move into that code cycle is extensive. Then you have to educate everyone on the code cycle so that you can implement it when you actually adopt it, and it doesn't contemplate any of that. And so there's just a lack of knowledge on the operational issues, and most of us, I think, who are on the tip of the spear are saying it will slow us down and will actually produce less housing because we're gonna be so bogged down in compliance and everything else that we don't have the capacity to do both.
And they're not giving you any money.
Yeah.
So,
And then back to the Prop 123, you know, we're at a point where I think if anyone can comply with it, I think we can compared to other cities. And, you know, it's figuring out what that's gonna look like. I told Molly the other day, we're gonna bring in some other people from the organization because I think in order to do this, you're gonna have to, we have to be able to tap into those dollars, especially on home ownership. Financially, to build affordable and let's say attainable 100%, 80 to 100%, it's almost impossible to build that for home ownership opportunities without some deep subsidies. Simply because when you factor in the land cost and you factor in the horizontal infrastructure cost, those two factors alone shift you completely in the other direction. And it can't look like it's looked. I think that's the other clear point is, you know, we look like a post-war community in terms of the development of our neighborhoods. And in order to hit the price points, you almost have to go to pre-war style density construction, you know, narrow lot widths, long houses, high houses, in order to hit your price points because you have to spread that land cost and that infrastructure cost over more units. But you can't do it without deep subsidies.
So that's we've given a couple of presentations, one to council and one to a group of housing advocates here in the last couple of weeks. And basically the median price of the home is not affordable, in Longmont, is not affordable to the median income family in Longmont. So basically, most Longmont families can no longer afford just the, you know, standalone house, yard, suburban neighborhood. That's just not where most of our people can be. And it's only going to deepen, so.
So yeah, it's impacting hiring. I mean, I'm on the Longmont Economic Development Partnership Board, and everyone's saying it's impacting hiring. I was in interviews for a position. You get a lot of applicants, but in terms of qualified applicants with experience, the cost of housing is narrowing your pool even for positions that can be national positions simply because, and these are positions that make 6 figures plus. I mean, around 200,000 when they're starting to evaluate, oh, I can make 175,000 here, you know, I get more house versus making 225,000 here and what I can buy. And so it's, you know, the best example of this is look at Boulder. I mean, Boulder is the prime example of the challenge. And we even see it in Coffee with Council where we find a lot of people that have sold their homes in Boulder for $1 million plus. And then they buy cash here, which then creates another tension point within the workforce. And what we're starting to see is people are doing the same thing here and then moving east. And so to the point of now you're out to affordability is Johnstown, Platteville, and those areas, which from a workforce perspective is troubling because you may be able to hire them, but the minute they can find a job, they're moving because they're closer to home and they're reducing their commute. So it's now showing itself as an economic development issue. And I'm hearing stories of doctors who make a lot of money, not even willing to move from the south side of the state up here because what they lose in terms of net income. And so we all have to figure this out. Anything else?
Well, on that note.
Hey, there are solutions. And there are solutions to this, and we just got a big grant to help to support one of those solutions. And hopefully in 6 months we can have something that'll show the model. It just takes a lot of creativity and
You gotta think outside the box.
yeah.
Well, you have to get buy-in from so many different groups, it's hard.
Well, neighborhood buy-in's the biggest issue. That's one of the biggest challenges our council's dealing with is, it's a different model. And we're starting to see groups change. So there's a developing group in the community, they call themselves the YIMBYs. Yes, in my backyard.
I love them.
Okay. And so we're definitely seeing that because that's the other tension point, even in the projects we do, is I think we've yet to go into a process where there hasn't been opposition even to the products we want to build from an affordability standpoint because of being adjacent to neighborhoods. And the good news is, and Arlene knows this because we live near each other, I live in a neighborhood that has 2 affordable housing units and a market rate rental unit, and I haven't seen the issues that everyone talks about. And so, yeah, challenges all over the place.
All right, so let's adjourn at 10:44.
Oh, good.